Hey everyone, in this video we're going to explore functions and closures in Swift. I am going to be using Swift Playgrounds in this tutorial, but any of these coding concepts can be applied when you're working in UIKit, so storyboards, or when you're working in Swift UI, any of the other playgrounds and things like that. But let's define some basic functions as well as dive into closures. Are you ready? Let's dive on in. Cool, if you want to follow along, I will be using Xcode and creating a playground here. So if this is your first time creating a new playground, you'll just simply want to open up Xcode. You go to the top left of your screen here, File, New, and then you'll want to select Playground. Once you've done that, you'll kind of have this little template window up here. And from here, you'll go ahead and select a blank template, hit Next. Choose where you want to save it. So I have a folder on my desktop called Playgrounds. I'm going to go ahead and then save it as Functions, Closures, Playground. You can of course name it anything you'd like. Once you've done that, you can hit Create. You'll have a playground up here on your screen. I'm just going to make mine a little bit bigger so it's easier to see here. And I'm going to open up my console on the bottom right as we'll be doing some printing. And I'm also going to press and hold on my play button to set my playground to automatically run. I'll also go ahead and just delete everything that's been created from our template. We're starting completely from scratch today. Awesome, let's go ahead and create our first function. What you can do to create a function is type out func, then the name of the function. So we'll call it greeting. We're going to create something that's going to, greet the user with their name. And then you could add some parameters. So in our case, we're going to be, requiring somebody's name. So we'll give the name here. We'll then declare what type of data type it's going to be. In this case, it'd be a string, it's going to be some text. We could then add our braces, hit return to go to the next line. You'll notice that our other brace automatically closes off. And let's go ahead and print. And we'll say hello, comma, and then we're going to use interpolation. So we're going to add a / brackets, and within these brackets, we're going to have the person's name. In order to call a function, this is where we can reference the name that we've given it. So in this case, it was greeting. We can hit return, and that's going to autofill and say like, hey, you're requiring a parameter for this function. And I already know what you're going to need. It's going to be this name. It's even going to highlight the parts that we need to change with these placeholders. And we can just type in a name. So in this case, it might be Joe. Once we run our playground, so again, mine's not automatically running. You might just need to manually press this. You'll see in the console, hello Joe. And every time that we call upon this function, so I'm going to type greeting again, use the autofill features to go quickly. And maybe this is, I don't know, Molly. It'll pass along that string of name that are within those parameters in order to give that information to that function, pass along that name, and print out that name. Pretty cool stuff, right? Let's now define a function that's going to have a return values. So we'll create a new function. A good case of returning is usually, with math, but of course, be creative. We can create something that says add numbers. Just like before, we'll add a parameter. In this case, we'll have our first value be a. Okay, and we'll say that this is an integer. And when you want to have multiple values within your parameters, you can separate them by using a comma. So it's going to be a, which is integer, comma, b, which will also be an integer. We then need to exit the brackets once we're done declaring what parameters we'll use. We'll add a dash and then a greater than symbol. Yeah, that's right, greater than. The one where the crocodile's eating the line here. And then we'll give what type of value that it's going to be. In this case, it would be an integer. Let's go ahead and add our brace and add a little bit of space. And we can say return a plus b. Now, when we call upon this function, so we're going to say let result equals add numbers. Again, use the autofill feature. It'll prevent you from making mistakes, missing out on parameters, right? Hit return. We'll say a is 4. Click on this integer here, and maybe we'll say 8. We'll then print our result here. So we would say result, comma, /, we'll add our brackets, result. And let's see how that looks in the print statement. Hello Joe, hello Molly, those are left over. Result 12. That's pretty cool. So we pass along that information, and then we can return a data type. Now what happens if we have two integers here and we try to return a double? Let's see what happens. We get an error because it cannot return the type of double. Int and doubles are two separate things. Awesome. Let's now talk about closures, which are kind of similar to functions, but they can be assigned to variables instead. So let's go ahead and create our first closure. So we'll say let say hello closure, oops, equals, and we're actually going to add our brace here, and again create some space, but we're going to return to that line where our opening brace is. We're going to create a little bit of space with a spacebar here, and we're going to create our parameters here. So similar to our greeting message, we're going to add a name, and we'll say that it's a string. And then we're going to use the keyword of in. And here we're going to say print hello, interpolate our name. Let's go ahead and then call upon our closure. So let's say hello closure. And then we'll go ahead and add our parameter of name. Oh, in this case, maybe name. Bobby. I was trying to think of a name and I literally typed out name. But of course, when we're doing these experiments with numbers and names, put whatever you want. I think that's pretty funny. It's like my brain's like, think of a name, literally name. I don't know. But this is a closure. It behaves like a function, but it's stored in a variable instead, allowing it to be passed around or reused. We can also create closures that have return values. So in this case, we did addition before. Maybe we'll do some multiplication. So we're going to create a closure and we'll call it multiply closure. Same as before. Create a brace, make some space. We're going to back up to that line, and with our adding of the numbers, we had an A and B. So let's just do the exact same thing. A, let's say that it's an integer. We'll have another one that's B, also an integer. Return it as an int, and then we'll say in, and here we can have our return A times B. So you can see that it kind of looks almost exactly like when we're creating a function, but the closure again is going to be held within that variable. Let's then create our result. Let result m, I'm just going to call it m for multiplication, equals multiply closure. We'll put in those parameters here, and we actually don't even need to have A and B. We can just have our numbers. So let's do 4, 6. We'll then print our result is, and then we'll reference our result m, and there we go. 4 times 6 is indeed 24, so all is well there. As you're kind of creating projects, remember it is important to name things appropriately. So in this case where I had result m, as I was typing that out, because we've already added result, it might be confusing for yourself when you kind of have these large projects, or for other people working in your project. So make sure that you're always naming things appropriately. It might be worth it to go back to this addition result and say, result addition, and then call this one result multiplication. Just like a really quick tip, as you create large projects with multiple names of functions or variables, right? Naming them specific and detailed will save you a lot of headaches and kind of losing things along the way. Just like a little coding life tip. Closures can also be used as completion handlers to perform tasks after asynchronous operations. So maybe we'll have a function here that is going to be fetching data. So we'll say func fetch data. We'll then add a parameter of completion, and we'll say that this would be a string, and that would return void. From there, we'll add our brace here. We'll add a little bit of space. We'll say let data equals data loaded. So this would be the message, once that data has been loaded, completion of that data. We'll go ahead and then create our closure here. We'll say fetch data result in, make some space, and then we would print the results. And we can see that that closure, right, is kind of giving us that, hey, data is loaded. It's going to fetch data, which is going to simulate loading the data, and takes a closure as a completion handler. After the data is loaded, the closure is called with whatever the result might be. In this case, we're just simulating something, but whatever that data actually would be in this case, it would serve as that kind of completion handler there. In this tutorial, we covered how to define and use functions within Swift. We explored some closures, passing and returning results, as well as using those closures for completion handlers. Keep practicing by writing your own functions, right? These are your kind of building blocks of coding. You set up the functions once, and you're able to call and reuse them in your code as you see fit. But keep practicing these to enhance your Swift skills. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger, and have a wonderful day, everyone.